But we better tell the other meeting that they better push it back a half hour.
Tell them to go have lunch. Tell them to go have lunch at
Bring
the
in
Delray
lunch.
Sands.
Yeah. All right, we're live on YouTube, it looks like.
Really? How do you know?
It says it.
Oh,
Meeting is now streaming live on YouTube.
oh yeah, there it is. Oh
Yeah.
my God, we're famous.
I
We're not
should have
going
worn
to
makeup.
I would have gotten a haircut.
Hmm.
Eileen's checking her texts.
Roger is not there. Does anybody want to give him a call?
We have 1 minute.
YouTube.
Come on.
It doesn't look like you have an app named YouTube. If you'd like, I can help you look for it on the App Store.
Who was that? Okay, I'm going to start the meeting.
Okay.
Good morning and welcome to the virtual planning board regular meeting on Thursday, August 13th at 2020 at 9:30 a.m. If you haven't already done so, please silence your cell phone. Will the assistant with the deputy town clerk please call the roll?
Member Brown is not with us.
Is this the loudest?
Member Mendelson,
Yes.
Member DeMoss,
Present.
Member Goldenberg,
Present.
Member Adwar,
Present.
Member Bowden,
Here.
Chairperson Axelrod,
Present.
Attorney Rubin,
Present.
Town Planner Allen.
Present.
Thank you.
Okay, will we please all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Stay here. I want you to say
I pledge allegiance
Allegiance
to the flag
to the flag
of the United States of America,
Rise.
the republic for which
which
it
is
stands,
the
one nation,
nation, under God,
under God, indivisible, with
with
liberty and justice for all. We have approval of the agenda. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda? Len, I have a point of procedure at this point.
Yes, sir.
We have a request in number, I think it's 8,
Yes, sir.
postponement. Do we discuss that at a change of the agenda, or do we discuss that when we get to unfinished business?
Let's discuss that when we get to unfinished business.
That's fine. Okay. Are there any deletions or agendas? Hearing none, I call for a motion to accept the agenda.
I
Somebody,
make that motion.
second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Now we will swear in the public. For those giving testimony, please come in, raise your hand, state and spell your full name individually, and state the application you are affiliated with before being sworn in. Deputy Town Clerk, please swear in the people.
Okay, we're gonna wait just a few minutes. Teresa will be joining them in shortly.
Okay. Can I go on to 7 in the meantime and approve the minutes?
It's not gonna take her that long. They're coming in right.
Okay, all righty.
Mr. Chairman, Mr.
Yes.
Brown is, no, I guess that was not him. Okay, never mind.
Got it.
to speak.
Beverly, everyone is in the meeting now.
Okay, we're all set. Okay, can you please raise your right hand? By the authority vested in me as a notary of the state of Florida, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Yes, thank you. Also, I just wanted to let you know that you will be put back in the virtual waiting room until the item that you're speaking on is up for public comment. So thank you very much. Okay, Mr. Axelrod.
Okay, the next item is number 6 is public comments. The town clerk office received multiple public comments requests for unfinished business item 8A. The public comments will be read into the record at that time. That being said, we will move on to number 7. There are no other public comments. Is that correct, Emily? Regarding any other subject?
There has been one, but Ingrid will talk about that during her testimony.
Okay. 8, number 7, approval of the minutes of July 9th, 2020. Are there any corrections to the minutes of July 9th, 2020? Hearing none, a motion to approve the minutes of July 9th, 2020.
I'll make that motion.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, number 8, unfinished business, development order application 190001 at 1006 Grand Court, Mr. Touche. Before we proceed into this, and I'll get your response on this, there has been a request for a postponement of this subject. So I would think if this is appropriate, we would open for a motion to postpone and discussion on that into the presentation. Am I correct? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Len?
That's fine.
Okay.
You
So
don't seem to be happy with
Yes
that.
or no?
If there's no motion, then the applicant will still needs to be able to make their request, but
well, are they going to make the request themselves, or if they've made the request, it's a matter of us voting on it? Request has been made. I mean, the request has been made, the reasoning behind it being that the attorney has changed and that the attorney requested things. However,
correct.
that being said, I understand that one of the presenters is the attorney herself that will be making a presentation. How do we handle that situation?
Well, I think you need to let his attorney give her reasons why she's requesting the continuance. Now, if you want
Okay.
the board wants to do a motion first, that's fine. If you want to let them, make their argument and then
Is
the
that
board
better?
deliberates, decides, that's fine too.
Is that better?
David,
Yes, Eileen.
Yeah.
Another attorney.
I would make a motion that we allow the extension, and then we should have our usual discussion. And if we need to have her make a presentation after the discussion, that's what I think we should do. So I
That's-
make that motion. Does anyone second it? No. Then I
No
guess- Okay, so I guess there's no motion.
Well, let's try another way and see if we get into discussion. Is there any motion not to postpone the presentation until the next meeting?
I make that motion.
Is there a
I'll
second?
second. I'll second.
Okay. Motion for discussion. Okay, let's have discussion.
Then I have a discussion point.
Go ahead, Eileen.
Okay, so, I've practiced law a long time. I've been involved in lots of courts and lots of litigation. It is common courtesy when a new lawyer takes over to allow them to get familiar with the case and deal with their client. And lawyers are busy. They have lots of other things to do. And I think a 1-month extension is not out of the question here. And I confirmed with I confirmed with Sachs and Kaplan that that was, a totally legitimate conflict. And so I think we should give them the extension.
Comments? I have one comment. Okay, Brian, go ahead.
Well, I think since you have witnesses, at least, we should at least hear from the witnesses and go ahead and hear from the new attorney. At least do that.
Well, I think you should hear from the attorney.
Oh, I definitely agree. Ms. Zacharias, you would like, I can't know how to pronounce your name. Go ahead.
Ms. Zacharias, thank you. Good
Oh,
morning.
that's right.
You did very well. Thank you. Good morning. Yes, Mr. Weiner was conflicted out. Thank you, Board Member Mendelson, for noting that. He was conflicted out. I was just retained about a week ago. As you know, there's a significant backup. I have done the best I can to prepare for today, but certainly a 1-month extension to allow me to really digest all the information and the back and forth would be greatly appreciated.
Any other comment, Brian? Any other comments? I'd like to make one comment. Out of courtesy, I totally agree that we should give an extension. I've talked to lawyer friends, and this is a common thing.
It is a-
However, and I'm going to ask both you and Mr. Touchette to answer the following question. At the last meeting, the request was to, one, let him go back. We agreed to let him go back and to go ahead and talk to his neighbors and think even about a compromise. Now, I understand, as I said, that I'm not sure that, as I said, I'm going to vote for the extension, but I'm not sure what is going to be gained by that, in the sense that those two things may not change even with your evaluation.
May I respond?
Sure, go right ahead, sure.
Yes, sorry. Yes, you are absolutely correct. I was brought up to speed with regard to reaching out to the neighbors. I am more than happy to do that. I have not had time to do that in the week that I've been working on it. But absolutely, I would love the opportunity to go. It'll probably be a virtual meeting due to COVID, but I would love to sit and virtually speak with the neighbors to completely understand what their concerns are and see if there's any room for negotiation and compromise.
Okay,
David,
yeah, Brian.
how about if we go through the witnesses that are there? At least let's hear from them before, can we do that before we judge?
Do you want to hear the witness? Wait, let me understand. Do you want to hold this motion and let the witnesses make their comments, the public make their comments now within the motion? Is that what you're trying to say?
Yes. Is that possible?
Well, it's possible, but I think it's cleaner if you're going to hear it, hear it. If you're not going to hear it, let's not hear it.
I agree. I think it would be bad to hear the witnesses.
Because there's no point to it. If you're not going to make a disposition of the case, then I would not. I mean, the witnesses can, of course, come back next month if the board postpones it.
David?
Elaine? Yeah.
I would like to hear a cohesive presentation. The lawyer who's prepared, who's had whatever time she has to negotiate, if they're going to do that, then the witnesses coming to tell us what they want. I mean, it's a case that should be presented like a case, not witnesses one time and lawyer a different time. I agree with Len. You either hear it or you postpone it.
Okay, to the attorney again.
Yes.
Planning to make a presentation today. I understand you handed it in. Like, you have any problem with holding off on that presentation until the next meeting?
I welcome the opportunity to, is this me? I'm sorry.
Yeah, that
Yes,
was to you.
yeah. I'm sorry.
Yes. I welcome the opportunity for a month postponement, again, to further grasp the material and invite the neighbors to the table for a negotiation and a compromise.
Well, let me ask this. Did Mr. Touche ever reach out to any of his neighbors like we had suggested?
I believe, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I believe there was communications with Mr. Mazzella, who is 2 doors down from him to the north. I also, and he is on the call, I know that there was some correspondence, I believe, between him and Miss Kennedy, who is his neighbor to the south.
Okay, thank you.
John?
When we made the, closed our last meeting and provided the postponement, I believe it was the intention of this board to have the principals speak with each other to see if there was a way to solve the problem. It was a surprise to me that it was anticipated that the attorneys were the ones that to make these communications. So in that was my thought of what it was. I would suggest that we proceed without postponement based on the opportunity for that communication to have occurred. Thank you.
Any other comments?
Can I say something?
Absolutely.
David, what about the residents that face this ugly lift? That I'm talking about the people in Bramer Isle. We have a few that sent in emails to Mrs. Allen. And also, there are many people that are not here that don't like this view that's been there for 3 years.
Harry, my answer to B was that discussion would only come up now if we go to discussion of the subject as a whole. So that being said, at that point in time, if we postpone, everybody from Bramer Isle can come in and publicly speak if necessary, etc. One of my problems with this whole subject has been looking back that all of these public comments that are there were not there at the initial approval of this subject and the second one. Wait, Eileen?
Yeah, I think that we shouldn't keep talking about it if we're going to extend it. I think we should
Okay.
vote on the motion to not extend it. And if it passes, then we should discuss the whole topic. And then if it doesn't pass, we should vote on a motion to extend it. But I don't think that we should keep, and Len, you can comment on this. We should not-
I agree with you. I don't want to talk.
We're doing it.
Okay,
Any comments now should be limited to whether you continue it or not.
Right.
I don't want
I
to get
agree,
into
I
it.
agree.
And I believe that's what the chairman
Oh,
was saying.
Roger, welcome. Good morning.
Sorry about
Okay.
that.
Maybe know
Well,
that
let's
Mr. Brown
vote
has
on
joined
that
us.
motion.
I had to get
Okay.
to the shore.
Are there any other comments?
The comment I have is if people would please mute their speakers, because every time you cough, clear your throat, move your coffee cup around, you are jopping around the meeting. It would be very courteous if you could do that, please.
David,
Good.
you want, Roger, are you up to speed on what we're voting on?
Okay. Roger, you with us?
No,
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Quickly, this is a vote to not, we're discussing a vote not to postpone the situation regarding 1006 Grand Court and the 12-foot pilings.
Okay.
Okay, are there any other comments? Can we, I guess, have a, if there's no further comments, I guess we can have a vote, call for a vote. Beverly?
Wait,
All right,
we're
just remember, this is not to postpone.
repeat the motion, please.
Not to postpone, correct.
So not to postpone. Roll call, Member Brown,
Not to postpone.
yes.
Yes.
You're saying yes?
You're saying he's voting yes on the motion, correct? Correct,
Yes, not to postpone. Yes.
not to postpone.
Member Mendelson,
No.
Member DeMoss,
Yes,
Member Goldenberg,
Yes,
Member Adwire,
Yes.
Member Brown, Member Bowden,
Yes, postpone. No, do not postpone.
no, okay, so no. Chairperson Axelrod,
wait.
No, that was
Oh.
yes. That was a yes.
I'm sorry.
That was a yes to not postpone.
Yes, not to postpone. Chairperson Axelrod,
I'll vote no on the motion.
So the motion carries 5-2.
Okay,
So we'll proceed.
let's proceed. Do any board members have any ex parte communications to disclose? Okay. At this time, I am opening the public hearing, and we'll start with a town planner, Alan. Please approach and present any application, anything you want to speak about.
Good morning, Chair Axelrod, members of the board. For the record, Ingrid Allen, Town Planner. I was planning to go over very briefly the agenda memorandum for this particular meeting that I prepared. Just talking about some of the correspondence that the town has received since the July 9th, 2020 meeting. So I'll just go over that very briefly. Again, if you all recall, you've already discussed this a bit, but at the July 9th, 2020 meeting, the board did make a motion to continue the item to this meeting, August 13th, in an effort to have the applicant reach a compromise with his neighbors. On July 28th, the town received an email from the applicant's attorney, Michael Wiener, stating that his firm must withdraw from the subject matter as a result, and I quote, "a recent development creating a conflict of subject matter. As a result, conflict of interest," end quote. That email is on page 26 of your agenda packets. And then on July 29, 2020, the town received an email from the applicant, Mr. Richard Touchette, requesting a postponement of his item in order to give him time to, and I quote, "hire a new lawyer," end quote. That email from Mr. Touchette is on page 27 of your agenda packets. And then on August 6, 2020, as Ms. Zacharias already indicated, she provided a letter to the town indicating that she's a new attorney and again requested the postponement of today's hearing. And I quote, "in order to provide an opportunity to get up to speed and speak with the neighbors." Mrs. Zacharias' letter is provided on page 28 of your agenda packets. Now, the board has already decided to proceed. I do want to add that since the July 9, 2020 meeting, the town has received additional public comment on this item, which is attached to this memorandum in your packets. Now, since the routing of the packet to the board, Mr. Touchette did provide 2 additional emails to the town and to the board. These emails were received on August 10th and August 11th, respectively. These 2 emails have been incorporated into the online agenda packet, which is available on the town's website. They are located at the end of the agenda packet after page 321. And after the routing of the packet, we also received some additional public comment. Again, that's after the packet was routed. And I've been advised by the clerk's office that this additional public comment will be incorporated into the agenda packet after the meeting. We did not receive any additional or any revised plans from the applicant. So the plans as submitted in part of the packet for the July meeting still stands. And I'll be glad to address any questions that you might have.
Does anybody on the board have any questions for? Okay, if nobody has any questions for Ingrid, the applicant may now make a presentation. Please provide your name and affiliation with this project.
Hi, good morning again. Ellie Zacharias, School Backman, 14 Southeast 4th Street. I'm here this morning on behalf of the owner and applicant, Mr. Richard Touchette. Can we start my PowerPoint? Thank you. Next slide, please. This is the subject property. Again, it's at 1006 the town of Highland Beach. Next slide, please. Just by way of background, and I think that it was the chair who noted this before. This lift has been before you twice. This will be the 3rd time for a vote, the 4th time for a hearing, as last month's was postponed. The first time we came in, we did get approval to install the boat lift for a 40,000 pound boat, and it was an 8-post platform boat lift. We came in for an amendment to that application because we needed 10 posts in lieu of the 8 that was previously approved. And that too was approved on October 11th, 2017. During construction, as I'm sure you all know, the town building official changed. I believe you also got a new director, and a stop work order was issued. The reason being because the beam and the height of the lift post was not accurately denoted on the plans that were approved. I don't do marine construction, but David Nutter is on this call and can answer questions as well. But from what I've been told, that's not typically something that's denoted on the plans. So nonetheless, we've wanted to work with the town. So we resubmitted plans that more accurately denoted the height of the lift beam as well as those lift posts. Next slide, please. Like I noted, we revised our plans, we resubmitted, and those are the ones that are before you today. So ultimately the lift pilings will be 12 feet tall. Next slide, please. Thank you. And this again is just our actual application request. It's for an amendment to increase the height of that boat. So the lift beam is going to be a little taller and the lift pilings will also be slightly taller. Next slide, please. This is the way it's going to look. So if you want to go back to the aerial, I don't know how familiar are you with the site, but this is the edge of the property on the water. The shaded area is all of my client's property, Richard Touche's. Next slide. Okay, so this slide accurately reflects exactly what we're proposing. So as you can see, the top of those lift pilings are going to be 12 feet above the existing dock, decking and seawall. So that's exactly as we're planning on building it, and that is what's before you today. Next slide, please. I've gone through the code pretty closely and reviewed it all. We meet every element of your code. I don't want to sit and reiterate unless anybody has a question about one of these code sections, but we meet every element of your code. Next slide, please. More importantly, it's not just me reading the code and telling you it complies, but this board has approved this lift twice now. So clearly the board believes that the lift meets the code. ATM did a further review, and as you can see, they went through, and this should be in your packet. I believe it's attachment 4. Ms. Allen can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's attachment 4, and it comes straight from their letter. So if you go through their letter, they go through every code section and they denote that we meet it. And this is the town's third-party reviewer that is hired by the town to review the code to make sure it meets everything. So I'm just going to highlight. Let me know if you can't see it. Can you press the space bar because it'll start highlighting. So for section 3068, it says the proposed lift is appropriately addressed as an accessory marine facility. Then it goes on to say that the proposed lift does not impede fairway access beyond established standards within this canal. It then goes on to say we're exempt from side yard setback requirements. Next slide. Let me see where we are. Sorry, bear with me 1 second. Okay, so it says we're exempt from the side yards. Installation is subject to the special exception of the approval by this board. Again, this is why we're here. But again, the board has approved it twice before. It denotes the facility is located in a canal or waterway at least 80 feet. And then it goes on to say that the code does not specifically account for these structures in the width determination. So that element is not part of your code and it's not restricted in your code. Next slide, please. It specifically talks about navigation twice in the letter, but then goes on to say additional discussion of navigation comes below. And I believe that's on page 4 of the ATM's report. They have a whole section that talks about navigation discussion. Next slide, please. And in that discussion, it says the structure meets the limited requirements delineated in the town code. And then to say town code is not specific regarding the issue, and it is noted that the lift was previously approved in this location. So again, I have reviewed the code and we meet every element of the code. But more importantly, your third-party reviewer that you have hired has reviewed it and has said we meet it. Next slide, please. So what is the issue at hand? As I noted, the town has previously approved this lift. However, the height of the lift pilings were somewhat, it appears they were not clearly denoted in the original site plan approval. So that is why we are back before you again. We're not back before you to ask for permission for a boat lift. We are back before you for the question as to whether or not we can increase the height of these lift pilings. And I wanted to also note that the town code, and this is quite important, the town code is silent as to the height of lift pilings. It does not mention anywhere in the code what the maximum height of a lift piling can be. So that's very important. But what it does do is it defines what a boat lift is. And in there it says, quote, "The bottom of the keel of any boat shall not be hoisted greater than 1 foot above the minimum seawall elevation. In no case shall the lift be higher than the superstructure of the boat when lifted." And if you can go back to slide, I apologize. If you can go back to slide, I believe it's 7. There you go. As you can see from the site plan submitted, again, while the code does not provide a maximum height for these lift pilings, it does provide in other elements the maximum your boat can be lifted. And as you can see noted on this plan that's before you, it provides the definition of a boat lift on there. And as you can see, we do not exceed that. So that is your code's way of providing the maximum that a boat can be lifted, despite the height of the actual lift pilings, and we meet that. So again, we meet every element of your code. I'm sorry, can you go back to where we were? Oh, you're so quick. Okay, next slide. Thank you. Again, as such, our proposal complies with the town code. Next slide, please. And while I was not given an opportunity to meet with the neighbors, and I apologize if they're on the call and they're going to speak today, again, I wish I had that opportunity to speak to them. But your code does mention this visual access to the waterways, As you can see from this exhibit, there is not one neighbor who will not be able to view the waterways. Every neighbor has their views to the waterways. That is not taken away from them. I believe Miss Kennedy's house is just to the south. And as you can see, it's densely forested in her backyard. That may affect her views, but clearly our location of our boat lift and our boat is not going to provide those restrictions. Next slide, please. So we read again ATM's letter, and they noted a couple of things that they wanted further justification for. I know at the last hearing, and again, I'm new to the matter, so I apologize, but I believe Mr. Gimple testified to these issues. He cannot be here today, so I'm just going to read a very short email he provided me responding to some of ATM's questions. He said the yacht has a triple drive propeller arrangement with one of those drives propellers on center line. The lower portion of the center drive propeller unit is located approximately 1.5 foot below the deepest point of the keel, allowing for the king tides and storm surges for storms of less than hurricane strength and the reduction in maintenance from keeping the drive unit clear of the waterways to a recommendation to enable the boat to be raised to a height where the lowest part of the drive's propellers is approximately 3.5 feet above mean high tide. This does not mean that the boat must be stored at all times at this height. The majority of the time the boat could be stored closer to the water and is when the threat of storm surge from storms of less than hurricane strength were anticipated. The above considerations drives the height of the lowest portion of the boat lift and also drives the requirement for the vertical length of travel of the lift to ensue that the underside of the centerline drive propeller unit will clear the lift at low tides when launching or retrieving the boat at those low tides. That total length of travel from the low tide to the highest stored position create a total length of lifting cable such that requires the length of the piling to be as designed. A lower length of piling would not allow sufficient cable travel. And I did provide that, but I provided it last minute, so it's not in your packet. So I did want to just read that into the record. So again, oh, and may I also make a request that last hearing also be part of this record as well? And then with regard to Ms. Allen's recommendations, if the board so desires to approve, obviously we agree with those. And with that, I'm here to answer any questions and hopefully I.
Do we have questions from the board from Ms. Zacharias? Eileen?
David,
Yeah.
No, I said Eileen.
she does not show any votes on the Brammer side.
Okay. Eileen?
I'm sorry, I'm having a, I didn't hear, was that a question? I didn't.
He just made a statement. He did not give a question, actually.
Okay.
I have a couple questions. I know very little about boats and very little about boats. I get seasick. I don't even go on boats, but and I'm not very good with engineering concepts, but two things I want to know. One is, I saw that when you went through all of our codes, the only thing that you showed that reflected, in your opinion, a height restriction was that it had to be no more than 1 foot above mean high tide level. Higher than fall. Okay. So I want to know how that coordinates with this thing about what you just read with his email that's not in the packet, that sometimes it has to be 3.5 feet above mean high tide, and sometimes it could be less. And I want to know how those two things match.
Okay. Sorry, I'm having a hard time hearing you.
Yeah, someone else is on the phone on this call. Mute themselves. Yeah, okay.
Please
Yeah.
mute yourselves when you are not speaking.
Okay, so that's my question. I want to know, that's my first question, how our code section that it can't be higher than 1 foot higher than the seawall fits in with this email that talks about how the boat sometimes has to be higher and sometimes has to be low, sometimes can be lower. That's one question.
Okay.
My other question has to do with what we discussed last meeting and what you sort of alluded to, that there's nothing in the code section that specifically deals with height, but the code sections do speak about installation according to plans. And it's my understanding that the plans reflected a lower height for the bottom of the pilings, and that doesn't work for this boat. And that's why, and that they said that was a mistake and they wanted it raised. So in the way that seems to me is that one of our code sections says the installation has to be according to plans, and it doesn't seem like it is, thereby violating the code. So those are my two questions.
Okay, so I'm actually going to attempt to answer them, but I'm going to request that David Nutter jump in as. David, are you on the phone? Are you on the phone?
I'm on the phone.
Okay, so just really quick, I believe some, and again, I'm not a boater either, so David could probably answer much better than I can, but the definition of the boat lift refers to seawall elevation, whereas Mr. Gimple's email is referring more to mean high tide. So I think those are two different things, and David could respond to that. Oh, sorry, really quick, Board Member Mendelson. Your second question, you're absolutely correct, and David can answer this as well. But the plans that were originally submitted denoted existing pilings and not the proposed pilings, which is where the confusion came. And that is exactly why we're back before you, for it to have that inaccuracy. Mr. Nutter?
Yeah, I'll start with the second question first. Yeah, the original plans showed a height of 4 feet, but it was in reference to the existing dock pilings. Unfortunately, when we drew the plans, we had the lip pilings flush with it at the same height, which we typically don't. And I can't explain why we did that on this one. It was just a simple mistake on our part. Typically, the lift pilings are 6-7 feet above the decking, not 4 like the existing dock pilings are. And typically, the lift equipment sits on top of the pilings. However, there are situations like this one where the lift equipment sits in between them, and it's attached with the brackets shown on the other cross-section page.
You're muted now, David. You should unmute.
Okay, so like I said, it was a mistake on our part. Typically, the lift pilings are 6-7 feet above, and the lift equipment sits on top, which would put the top of the lift equipment about 8 feet above the decking on a typical situation for a 4 or 8 post lift. As far as the height of the keel above the seawall and the water, what the naval architect was getting at on that is to keep the motors, the lowest part of the motors, out of the water at a high tide, we would need to be about 4.5, 5 feet above the water, the high tide, which would put us at the max of 1 foot above the seawall, which is what the code reads. During normal water levels, it could be raised lower than that, as long as we still raise it above the lift equipment. It could be up to 3 feet lower than this. Is if you look at that cross section, the top of the superstructure of the boat is 3 feet 2 inches above the equipment. So it could be all the way up to 3 feet lower than what's shown in the drawings. But to keep it out of the max high tides, this is would have to be higher. It would have to be higher than this it's shown in the drawings. Would we like to lift it higher to make sure it's out of the water? Sure, but this is the max that it can be.
I just want to clarify two things that you said, and then I'll go on. So you're saying that in no event will you ever raise it to higher than 1 foot above the seawall? In no event. Is that what you're saying? Okay.
Correct.
And my other question is, I understand what you're saying about the mistake. I understood what you said about it last week. However, because of the mistake, it's possible, do you think it's possible that the earlier approvals might not have been given had you really drawn it correctly and shown everybody that it was 7 feet with the equipment between it? And then they would have realized that that would have meant that it would have gone higher, and maybe it wouldn't have been approved. I think that's why our code says once you get an approval, you have to install it that way, because otherwise then the board might not have done what you wanted done. I mean, that's my point to your mistake. And I'm sorry that you made a mistake. And yes, people make mistakes, but I don't know what that earlier board would have done. I mean, you?
And I couldn't answer that either. I don't know what the earlier board, if they would have said yes or no.
Okay, good. All right, those are my
Brian?
questions.
Yep, may I add something?
Yeah.
Just, Mr. Nutter, if I just for clarification, and this is past, this is where we're at, but I'm just curious, if you look at the overhead and basically Mr. Chaussette has basically an L-shaped lot, why didn't the boat lift go down the long part of his property where you could have driven it right in and driven it right back out instead of making the right turns and being more exposed to the marina? Just reason why.
That you would have to ask Richard. Yeah, we drew it and designed it and installed it where he wanted it.
Is the applicant there?
To respond to that, would you like to respond to it? Okay.
Yes, I'm there.
Yeah.
The reason is to maneuver. It's easier to back up the way it is now than back up the other way. Because when you back up the way it is now, you just turn slightly and you go out. And when you come back, you just come in.
Okay.
But
I
you know,
don't that reason. If I'm
could have.
back I'm driving a car straight in, I drive it straight in. If I'm backing the car
Yeah.
out, I back out and make the right turn into that marina, so to speak. But that's your philosophy. Okay. If I may, a couple points. I've got a couple of videos and what have you that I'll show. But one thing that I did do, I looked at some boat or some lifts on the Bramer side, and I went out to the dock and I measured the pylons to the dock and where the boat lift is. It's anywhere between 57 and 59 inches. That is the same height as what the pylons are on the dock to what they are on the boat lift. There's a couple other boat lifts that are on the Grand K side that are compatible with the dock pylons. It's the same height. There is one where the lift equipment is on top of the pylon, as Mr. Nutter mentioned, but it's compatible with what is in the marina currently. What we're looking at now is so out of the ordinary with what the marina has. Even if you look at the marina to the south, which is part of Boca Highlands, there is uniformity. What we're proposing, or what you're proposing, is non-uniform to what is in the marina that you're in and to the south, or really throughout Highland Beach. It's non-conforming.
Any other comments? John?
I would like to reiterate the importance of the piling height not being on the original plans that were approved by this board previously is a very important question. The second is on the photograph and diagram that shows the original view. It appears to be inaccurate as the view is being unobstructed. The arrow on the chart does not show the boat being there. If the boat had been there, the arrows that are drawn would be inaccurate.
I'm just going to add on something to what John said. The pilings were put in at 12 feet without a permit to have the 12 feet.
I
Very
agree.
honestly, that was in violation of our approval. They are now coming back and requesting that we accept this thing that they went behind our back and did. So that is a question. Again, following up, I think on Eileen's second question, these pilings were put in already, and you expected us to approve them. If we don't know if they would have been, the original one would have been approved or not. So theoretically, this putting in of the pilings of 12 feet without our approval does, by a certain sense, violate our approval. I'd like to have Mr. Zacharias to respond to that.
Hi, yes, we do recognize that there was a mistake on our part, and that is exactly why we are here today, is to.
It is not a mistake. It was put in prior to coming to the board. They were put in, and then you're asking us now to approve something that you did theoretically illegally against our code. Because the code says we have to approve a building permit. So you're coming back after doing something. This is what bothers me. I'm not going to worry about some of these other things. You came in and asked us for approval of something you already did. And that's not a mistake, okay? That is not a mistake.
Can I say something?
Go right ahead.
Yeah, when we, the 4 feet is for the existing piling. There was no height shown for the piling to be built. So, and we were going to build it according to the bylaws. So we didn't do that on purpose. We just didn't put, there was no height put on the pilings to be built.
But you don't think that you should have come back before you put the 12 feet in and requested it? You knew that in the original approval, it said 4 feet. You came back when you wanted to add the other extra 2 pilings. But then, not according to code, you went in and raised what says in our approval 4 feet, another 8 feet up to 12 feet. You did not request that. You went ahead and did it.
Yeah, but we never put the 4 feet for the pilings to be built. The 4 feet was only for the existing pilings.
That's
But that
not
was
true.
our-
It's in your
if you-
plans. It's in your plans. It was a mistake, but it's in your plans.
Right. We
All right.
approved it as 4 feet. Eric, all right,
I can appreciate Mr. Nutter having an issue with the mistake. But at that point, somebody should have come back to the previous board and said, listen, we have an issue that was a mistake, unintentional, and we need additional approval. But then nobody did that. They went like, whatever, let's get it done. And we did it. Now you're asking us to approve something additional, and now his attorney says, oh, but we're going to raise it only 3 more feet at super high tide. But that's very rare. I mean, it's 6 times a year. But how do we know, since they've already tried to push something through without approval, that he's just not going to say, oh, well, let's keep it really high and dry and rack it up the additional 3 feet.
Okay.
That's one thing. Second of all, the image that John talked about with the arrows for the visuals, at that point, somebody should have put in where the lift is and then shown the visuals with the lift in it. Now, I understand you might not be able to put the boat in there, but I did not see the lift unless I missed it, that the lift was in on the property to show the visual sightings. Because if that, we're talking about another basically 12 feet sticking out from the dock. And the other question I have is for Town Planner Allen. Is there a code about how high the posts have to be or allowed to be above the dock?
The code, there's no code provision with regards to a minimum or maximum height of the lift piling.
Okay, thank you. But that's my
however,
comment.
it does say they
how do we-
cannot visually
how-
obstruct. They says
Yeah.
cannot visually.
That's correct.
In all
That's
due
correct.
respect, how do we trust Mr. Torricelli after they went one time and tried to slip this through and say, all right, we'll
Okay.
do it 8 feet, 12 feet, 16 feet, 20 feet, what's it matter?
Okay. Ms. Zacharias, do you want to respond to some of this?
I just want a point of clarification. The code does not say obstruct views. The actual code says reasonable visual access to public waterways. Public waterways, people anticipate boats, they anticipate boat lifts. That's why most people live on the water. So when it says reasonable visual access to waterways, all of that is anticipated. And again, and I apologize, I probably should have superimposed a boat on my aerial. I just got hired. I had to put a presentation together. But the views, whether the boat's there or not, the only views that would be obstructed, even though that's not in the code, would be Mr. Touche's views when the boat is lifted. Miss Kennedy can sit out on her backyard and visually, code say have reasonable visual access to public waterways. She can see the water. Okay. I just wanted to make a point of clarification.
Okay, John, and then Roger, I want you to come in a bit because you're the boater on this thing. I'd like to hear some response. We go back and forth, etc. So, John, let me ask Roger that question, and then we can go out, guns on to you. Roger?
I request that you put the slide back up that shows the arrows in the view so other members of this board can understand the issue we're discussing.
I actually would like to ask a question, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Mr. Touche, you say that the only reason why you put your boat lift there at the distal end of your property is because of navigation issues rather than on the side of your property. Is that the only reason why you put it there at the end?
No, also when I come with a boat, I think it's easier for them to dock where it's empty now.
But if you're
But
pulling the boat into the lift, you're pulling it in bow first into the lift. I would say that the only difference is that the putting the boat lift at the distal end of your property, pulling it bow in first, you actually have to pull into the canal and stop, pivot the boat and pull it in, whereas opposed to pulling it straight into the lift on the lateral side of your property, you would just literally pull it straight in. And the same thing on the way out. It actually, for me, as a boater, it appears easier to do it on the lateral side of your property, except that would probably block your view.
I agree with you on that, Ron.
well, if I'm allowed to dock any boat without a lift, I sent you
Yes.
some picture. Can you put the picture I sent in my letter?
No, you don't have to put the picture up. You can dock any boat you want as long as it doesn't encroach on your neighbor's property lines in the water. That's absolutely true.
Yeah, but I don't understand why you're so worried about the lift itself. It's the boat. I can dock any boat there, any size boat, and without a boat lift. And
If I may add, I apologize. If I may add, I understand there's questions as to the location of the boat lift, but this boat lift was approved by you twice at this location. The issue is the height of the lift pilings, not the location of the dock itself.
Okay, correct. Eileen?
I agree. First of all, I agree with Eric's comment that we can't approve something and then trust that you're only going to raise it up like during certain times. Once you give an approval, you give an approval. So that's the first thing. And then to what Mr. Trichet said, this board is about process and following the code. When you have a code and you have rules, we have to follow them so that everybody understands that the rules are to be followed, okay? You're right that this board approved it, but they approved it at a certain level. So if you're going to keep to that level, the location is approved, the boat lift is approved, everything is approved. You now need something that the board that approved didn't know that was going to be the case. And now you're saying you've gone ahead and done it and you want our permission, as David pointed out. And I think that it's about the process. Yes, you can go put a big boat in there, any boat you want that fits, the requirements, and it could be bigger, but that's allowed and this isn't allowed. I mean, that's the point. You have to follow our rules or it's anarchy. Everyone's just going to go, I'll do what I want. And whenever it doesn't work out, I'll just change it in the middle and hope they don't catch it. I don't think you can run a town like that.
I agree with you, Eileen, and that's my concern.
Yeah.
but usually a boat lift is 8 feet high.
So not in this marina. Not in this marina.
Let's not have it. Stay calm.
Yes.
Doing all this, we've gone back and forth, I think. Eric, if you want to make one last statement, and I have a number of public comments that we have to permit into this discussion. So Eric, you want to finish this?
All right, I have been a boater and I've had my boat on a lift in the Intracoastal right at the Regency, which is quite difficult because it is not a no-wake zone. And I can appreciate boats coming up and being on a lift. But again, to Eileen's and my point, you did something that was not approved. Now you're asking us to sort of approve what you've already done and then increase it even more. And I find that a little unconscionable.
Okay. Okay, we're now going to proceed to public comments. If you're going to please state your name and address for the record and provide your comment. Tarisha, how are we handling this?
Lauren Galvani, she is in the
Okay.
meeting now and she's going to provide public comment.
Okay. Lauren, just be aware that you're limited to 5 minutes, okay?
Understood.
Yeah.
Thank you all for your time this morning. My name is Lauren Galvani. I am an attorney and I represent the homeowner, the trust that owns 1009 Grand Court, as well as the owners of slip 20 and slips 4 through 9 that are in that waterway and marina. My clients are extremely opposed to this lift. Not only they are opposed to the height, but more so opposed to its location. And they have informed me that they were not given proper notice of the original meeting that permitted the placement of this lift at its current location. They have advised me that they would be in favor of the lift on the other side of his property, which has already been brought up by the various board members today. The notice, the letters from ATM, it did bring up twice about the navigational issues in that waterway. And what it did state was, as it stands already, the normal amount of width in the waterway does not comply with the normal town codes and ordinances to begin with. So on that basis, it couldn't say that the placement of the lift where it is was in violation and restricted the waterway because the waterway itself was already restricted. As I represent the owners of other slips in that marina, they have told me that the placement of this lift and its size does restrict access for their boats and other water toys that they have coming in and out of their slips for where that is placed. In terms of following the rules, I know that Mr. Touche, was in between attorneys, had a conflict issue, and had to seek new counsel during this time. But I have to wonder, that did not stop him from personally reaching out to his neighbors for comment. And how many of his neighbors did he reach out to comment? I had to track him down to speak with him. And ultimately, he did speak with Louis Mazzella, who resides in 1009 Grand Court. And he unequivocally said that he could park the biggest boat that he wanted to at his property, and that he would not make any concessions of any kind with regard to his boat lift, its height, and its placement. And he knows how upset the entire neighborhood is at this lift, and he purposefully did not reach out for their comment or approval.
Thank you very much for your comments.
Thank you for your time.
Eric, what do you want?
I just would like to know, I was a bit confused. How many residents are you representing?
I believe, I don't know. Beverly, can you respond to that? What, we have 5?
No,
No,
Ms.
the attorney.
Galvani.
Oh, how many residents, Ms. Cavani is?
So the Mazzella family is the owner of the trust that holds 1009 Grand Court, in which Louis Mazzella resides in. And then Ann Mazzella personally owns slip 20 and slips 4 through 9, I believe it is. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Our next speaker?
Miss Kathleen Kennedy did register and she was in the waiting room. However, she is no longer there. So that is all that we have for public comments.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
All righty. Brian, did you want to, at this point, that you said you had a video you wanted to show? I think we're now at the point for us questioning staff, for applicants or the public, and also for us to have a discussion, any further discussion we're going to have. You said you had a video you wanted the board.
Yeah, yeah. Lynelda, do you have those?
Actually, Teresa does. She's gonna be.
Or Teresa, excuse me.
Here you go.
Okay, so this is coming from the intercoastal into the marina, and you see two boat lifts there in front of you, and then we kind of circle in to the marina. And this is from the Bramer side, looking into the marina. You can see another boat lift right there. Again, it is at the height of the pylons, dock pylons. And then we go back to Mr. Touche's property back there. Excuse my amateurism on this, but it gives you a good perspective of the largeness of what he has. And again, the property on the north side that could be adequately used for a boat lift. The second video, this is that the only one?
No, there's more coming. Just
Okay,
Teresa
thank you.
has all
I
of
think this other one will be from the right moving left in the marina. Yeah. Again, very narrow area, 4 boats. The property in front there is Miss Kennedy, and I'm just curious if she wanted a boat lift, how would she maneuver that in? But it gives you an idea of what this structure is and what the whole marina is. And again, this is Bramer that you're looking at there to your left side. Again, there's about 76 apartments that look down onto the marina on that side, and there has not been one person that has been very happy with this. This is from the roof of Bramer. That kind of gives you a perspective looking down and how narrow things are and how abnormal the superstructure is. Right in front there next to the big boat, you have a boat lift. But it kind of gives you an idea of what the marina is, the smallness of the marina, and what this superstructure lift is like. Thank you. Again, that boat lift that was in front, I'll just repeat. The pylons, at least on the Bramer side, are 57 to 59 inches tall. There's a couple boat lifts. They reach as high as up to that 57, 59, and the boats are out of the water. It conforms to what is in the marina. The first video showed 2 boat lifts that are on the other side. Again, they conform to the marina height and the dock level pylons. Thank you very much.
Okay. One question for Mr. Nutter first. Mr. Nutter, are you there? David?
I'm here.
Okay. What happens to those 10 pilings at 12 feet? You should choose to not allow them.
If you don't allow them at the 12 foot, then Mr. Touche is going to have to make a decision whether he wants to actually install the lift or not, or install it at a height that the city will allow.
Okay. Would that height be of any danger to the boat or anything like that? Or would it be a problem putting it at the original height if necessary?
Well, we still want to be putting it at the 4 feet that that the board's reading on the plans, because again, that was the dock pilings, not the lift pilings. They're typically 2-3 feet above that. So it would still be higher than that. We would probably have to amend the plans for the pilings to be at a 6 or 7 foot height. And hope that we can make it work for the boat.
Okay.
Chairperson Axelrod, if you may. Kathleen Kennedy is in the waiting room. She may have been having some technical difficulties, but if it's the pleasure of the board, I can let her in for her comment.
I think that's appropriate.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
Thank you very much.
One question first. Mr. Nutt, are you there?
Are you talking to me again?
No.
I'm here.
Okay. What happens to those 12?
Getting some weird feedback somewhere.
Yeah.
While we're waiting for Ms. Kennedy, could I ask David Nutter a question?
Well, first, I think
All right.
Zacharias wants to make a
Fine.
comment at that point. Go ahead.
I'm digesting everything the board is saying, and in interest of time, I was just wondering if there is a height at the, and Chair, I like how you were going with that with Mr. Nutter. Is there a height of these pilings that the board would be comfortable with? Perhaps we can discuss that and move forward that way.
Let me ask Mr. Rubin if that's appropriate for us to do. Because I remember when we discussed compromise at the last meeting, it was said no at that point.
Yeah, he said we couldn't negotiate at the meeting.
Right.
I guess what I'm getting at, perhaps if the board can give a little bit of direction, we can revise our plans and come back again.
Exactly. Well, that's what I was going to say. That they're welcome to revise their plans and come back if you want to provide some general guidance, but we're not here to negotiate a compromise.
Okay, that's what I understand. Okay.
David?
Yes.
Yeah. Again, I would say that we should not be throwing out guidance, because anything that's more than 4 feet isn't what our previous planning board people approved. So they should come in with a whole new submission and we should look at it. I mean, I don't want to negotiate against ourselves as a board, as a public board. I mean, that makes no sense to me.
Hi, Eric.
I agree with Eileen, number one. Number two, a question for David Nutter. Are concrete pilings stronger than the wood pilings? If there were less pilings and less height, would concrete be a better option?
For this particular lift, it wouldn't make a difference.
Okay.
Okay. Teresa? Yeah.
Miss Kennedy is in the room. I don't believe her video is working, but bear with me one moment. I believe her audio.
Hi there. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good morning. It's Kathleen Kennedy. Thank you all for taking time to have this meeting today, because 3 years has been a long time to wait for some kind of resolution. Just to be clear, and I don't know if you've all had a chance to review the letter. And excuse me, I am in Pennsylvania sick with COVID, so I'm a little under the weather. But first and foremost, what I saw approved in 2017, which noted that there was no other changes, was from an 8-post boat lift to a 10-post boat lift, changing it from concrete to wood pilings. There was no other changes that were noted in the submission and revision. But lo and behold, this entire lift has moved 15 feet onto my property line. And I'd like to see where that was approved, because it looks to me like it was snuck in, specifically with language, if you review the notes, where it says no other changes but from 8 to 10 piling, which seems rather innocent. Unfortunately, it shifted 15 feet in the opposite direction. So I would like to see that. It's also worth noting that the mailing list is now over 5 years old. When I took possession of the house 3 years ago, they sent notice about this to residents that lived there years prior to me ever taking occupancy. And I've had reports from many of the neighbors having the same issue where the notice was never received. Additionally, there was a notice that was sent out for this current matter with the height. And I'd like to point out that those were all sent to Boca Raton and not Highland Beach, or at least a large portion of them were sent to the wrong city. And so therefore the notice was never received. If I hadn't riled the neighbors during COVID, I fear that this just would have been pushed through. I do have quite a stake in this matter because not only is this on my property line, potentially encroaching on my line, according to the survey that I've had done, but there is less than 9 feet of clearance in a wind tunnel that makes it completely impossible for anybody to navigate through. So not only am I destroyed as far as my property value and my access and my ability to have a boat, which is now off the table, but anybody that's to the south of me is also severely affected. And this isn't very well demonstrated right now because the boat that is in the deeded slip across from the canal has been moved maybe a year ago, and you can't quite get a read on it because the boat's not there. What you're seeing in your aerials are pilings, but the boat was extending significantly over that point. And I, at one point, measured 8 feet of space in a wind tunnel to try to get through to my portion of the canal. So I hate to be redundant. I have tried to note all the different guidelines and expirations that have come and gone in the letter that I had submitted to the city. I hope you've had a chance to review it, but it seems like there's pitfalls everywhere, and that to just discuss the height, I understand this is a technicality and this is where we're at, but I think we need to do a full review of the process. I think we need to look at the different government agencies that have expired permits on this and the self-certification process that got us to this point to begin with, because it's false. And I've had the EPA come out and shake their head. I've had every different environmental company that's looked at it shake their head and wonder how this got to be where it is. And I am trying to sell my house, and now my investment is destroyed because nobody wants a property on the water that you can't access. So I do appreciate you holding this meeting today because I think 3 years is a long time in the making, and I don't understand why we're here three years later with this issue. Mr. Touchette has made no attempt to contact me. I have reached out to him. I heard through the grapevine that if he doesn't get approval, he's going to put the biggest boats, and his neighbor, his friend is going to take the other side and put the biggest boats in this basin, and they're going to do what they want. My view, for the record, has been completely abolished between unmaintained vegetation. My foundation of my house has been destroyed because of a ficus tree that he's got nestled right up in the corner of his property, abutting mine. I've had to replace my pavers, my foundation. His water dumps on my property on a regular basis, and now my view is destroyed and I have no water access. So I'm sure Mr. Touchette's a nice person to the right people, but it's certainly not been the neighbor that I anticipated in moving into Highland Beach. And I'm hoping that you guys will stand by your code and do a full review because it's unacceptable. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Ingrid, in what she is saying about going over property lines and everything like that, have we looked at this? Is it, I mean, she's making statements which, if it is over the property line, is violation of code, that's a violation of code.
Right. Let me read you the code section. It's 30-68G4, and it states, when moored, any portion of a boat shall not extend beyond any property line as extended waterward. So when moored.
So what happens if down the line, he puts up this, boat lift and the boat, and all of a sudden we find that this 50-foot boat that he's intending to buy hangs over the line.
Then it would be a code enforcement issue.
Exactly. It would be a code violation.
Okay. But right now, what Ms. Kennedy is making statement that she makes, everything fits in within the code of the boat lift. It is within codes in relation to boundary. Is that correct?
The boat lift, as provided in the plans by the applicant, is within their property line.
Okay. Eric?
That's what I'm trying to understand. Ms. Kennedy says that it extends 15 feet onto her property. Is that as if there would be a 50-foot boat, or is it the lift that extends onto her property? And do we have any documentation on that?
Sure.
Is there a way we can get documentation on what a 50-foot boat would require? I mean, honestly, right now, we are voting only on the height. But that we can request the town planner to go back and evaluate some of these points regarding the boat. Am I correct on that, Mr. Rubin?
Yeah, correct. But I believe that the town has already determined that the actual structures or the marine structures are within the property line extended.
Okay.
That's correct.
But I think Ingrid was just about to answer that question.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Are there any other comments from the board? Eileen?
So is the public comment all done now?
Yes, yes.
Ma'am.
So this is like our discussion now?
On discussion, yeah.
Okay. So I go back to my basic thesis in this. If they want to come back and build this lift exactly the way it was in those plans, then I think that we as a board, unless someone can really find that after searching, that we did not properly notice people about the earlier hearing, I would listen to that, but I'm skeptical about that because the town usually sends out notices. So, but it's possible. But I would say that otherwise, if they wanted to build it exactly as the plans were and put those posts back down to the right size, then I think that they're entitled to do that. If they want to rip down the whole thing and put the biggest boat that's allowed in the code and subject to navigation, then that's their right. You know, all the neighbors can go to the EPA and all the, people that deal with waterways and say that the boat's too big, and those agencies, can talk about navigation. But otherwise, I would not want to go and give someone big, taller things that weren't on their plans that just would make that kind of behavior something that everybody would do. Oh, we'll give a set of plans, we'll get it approved, and then in the middle, we'll change our minds and build it, and they won't stop us. That's not a good program.
Okay. Eric?
First of all, can we have a discussion without a motion? I would make a motion that we would disapprove the
Actually,
presentation
the answer to
as
that,
presented.
Eric, if I may stop you for a second, the answer is that basically we have to close the public hearing and then make a motion.
Well, let's close the public.
That's why
hearing.
we haven't made a motion yet, but so we have to do that.
Public hearing's closed. So if you want to make a motion, it would be
Oh, okay.
appropriate.
You can. Okay. Eric?
I make a motion that we disapprove the presentation as presented. I mean, later
Yeah.
on, after that motion, after it's approved or disapproved, they can come back with a different presentation.
Second, and I already gave my comment.
Okay.
May I make a
Now
comment?
commenting on the motion. Go ahead.
If this board denies this, votes negatively, will that require these pilings to be removed? This is a question for our attorney. Be removed, and how long will be provided for that remedy to take place?
The answer is yes, they would have to be removed if they don't have an approval. If they're going to submit another application, then I would give them time to do that. But because even if, we could, they're not approved right now. So if the board does not approve the application, then we have, they're not approved at the height that they are. So they would have to eventually be removed. But if there's another application pending, I think we would be reasonable, but eventually, yes, they would have to be removed if there's not.
Or cut down to size.
Well, exactly. Well, that's what I was saying, to have them,
Yeah.
if they're going to be cut down in size, to remove them seems like an onerous, if there's some
Right.
lower height that they want to come back in with an application. But we, and I understand the residents are concerned about the length of time, and we don't want this to drag on because it has been a quite lengthy period of time.
John?
Would, for instance, if we vote no again, and the solution was to come in with a chainsaw and make these pilings cut down to the legal size, would we deem that as a remedy?
If it can be constructed as approved in accordance with that prior approval, then that is perfectly fine. Yes, that is a remedy. But it would have to comply with what was already approved.
Or Mr. Cutter, at this point, Mr. Nutter may want to come back and say, have him come back and say that, well, it can't be safely done at that point, at which point they make a reapplication, correct, at the size that they think is appropriate, and we consider it as said.
Correct.
Any other comments?
David, one item. On page 180, 189 and 190, it showed, I guess, of our agenda.
Oh, okay, of our packet. Go ahead.
Yeah, it showed where how the lift was going to be. You had two and one pylons like on each side for a lift, and then you have the new, I guess, what is out in the water now. You had two and one, but spaced much more further apart. Is there two mechanisms racing that boat, or what, Mr. Nutter? If I explained myself correctly. Is Mr. Nutter there?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, on each side of the boat, there's two lifting beams, two carrier beams. And then they are placed in between the two sets of pylons.
Okay. So is there just one lifting mechanism?
There's two carrier beams, lifting beams, as you're calling them. There's two on each side of the boat.
Okay. Is that why the original one had the beams back quite a ways, and the one that are right next to the property line, is that why? Because
the original plan was for an 8-post lift and then two mooring pilings down at the end, just for extra tie-off points. And then due to the size of the boat, the Neptune, the manufacturer, made a few customizations to it to turn it into a 10-post lift. So that now all 10 posts are involved or included in the lift.
Okay, I see. Thank you.
I ask a question that relates to that one. Does that mean that the new plan has two more additional pilings to be installed?
No, they were always included. They were included as the mooring pilings.
Can I interject here for a second? I just want to clarify for the board. The 2 pages that were just referenced by Mr. DeMoss, page 189 and 190, these were the plans that were provided to the planning board at the second meeting in 2017 in October. So this is part of attachment 2. Let me just advise the board, the plans that are before you today that are date stamped June 22nd, 2020, start on page 209. So I just want to be sure the board is clear.
But the lift diagram on 190 is the same as that other one, isn't it? What was that, 207?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much there's the lines, there's some lines that don't extend all the way. I mean, basically it looks like the posts are in the exact same spot, but I just want to be
okay.
That page 190 was attached, part of attachment 2, went before the board in October 2017, and the actual proposed plans before you today by the applicant, date stamped June 22nd, 2020. Again, start on page
Right.
208, 209, actually 210 might be a good sheet to look at as well.
Yeah, got it.
Thank you.
Are there any further comments?
Can I call the question?
Yes, you may. The motion before us is to deny the variance request of to raise the pilings to 12 feet. Okay, Beverly, would you please call the roll?
Member Brown,
Yes, to deny.
Member Mendelssohn,
Yes.
Member DeMoss,
Yes.
Member Goldenberg,
Yes.
Member Adwar,
It's muted.
Unmute, Harry.
Member Adwar,
Yes,
Member Bowden,
Yes.
Chairperson Axelrod.
Yes,
Motion carries.
thank you. Okay,
Wait, David?
yeah,
I just,
Attorney has a question.
I just want to thank you all for your time. And just to clarify, if we go back to the 4 feet, we do not have to come back to this board again. Is that correct?
You'll have to take down the posts, yeah.
yeah, no, Leon, as long as you meet the original,
Approval as modified. It's
as
fine.
original approval and the secondary approval, the extra 2 are in, yes. But
Correct.
but that's where we stop.
All right, thank you. Thank you all for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. New
All
business.
right.
Development order application number 20006, Conde Jane Leffler. Application by David Nutter, Boat Lifts and Docks of South Florida for a special exception approval to install a 20,000-pound capacity boat lift for property located at 4318 South Ocean Boulevard. Do any of the board members have any ex parte communications to disclose? Good. At this time, I now open the public hearing. Town Planner Allen, please present your testimony.
Hey, good afternoon, I think, almost.
Still morning.
Better not be, the commissioner will throw us out.
By that time. So this request again is to install a 20,000 pound capacity. This is an elevator style boat lift. Again, at the property located at 4318 South Ocean Boulevard. According to the applicant's survey, there's an existing wood dock which will remain. I do also want to state that according to the applicant's application, no new pilings are to be installed for this lift. Let's go ahead to the aerials of the subject property. We can go to slide number 17. These aerials are provided on page 310 in your packet. So this is an aerial of the site. Actually, we can go to the next one. You get a little bit better perspective of existing dock. The applicant has obtained FDEP approval. I've gone ahead and referenced that approval application number in the staff report. And according to their FDEP approval, the request does not require a separate permit or authorization from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Section 30-68 G6D2 of the Town Code states that accessory marine facilities, which of course includes boat lifts, located in multifamily residential zoning districts, they are exempt from side yard setbacks. Section 30-131 of the Town Code provides your definition of boat lift. I'll go ahead and read it into the record. It means that the bottom keel of the boat shall not be hoisted greater than 1 foot above the minimum seawall elevation. In no case shall the lift be higher than the superstructure of the boat when lifted. The proposed request is in compliance with the definition of boat lift. If we can go to slide number 19, please. Here you'll see there's actually a little note here. It might be difficult to see, but it does indicate that that existing dock is going to remain. If we can go to the next slide, number 20. Just to give you perspective here you have the southern property line Here you have the northern property line, and then here you have the proposed boat lift in this area. If we go to sheet number DTL1, which is slide number 21, this is of course provided by the applicant. You will see that the top of the lift is measured at 7 feet 3 inches from the existing wood dock, while the superstructure of the boat when lifted is 8 feet 8 inches from the existing wood dock. Again, this is consistent with the definition of boat lift, that the lift should not be higher than the superstructure of the boat. According to section 30-68H1A of the town code, it states that the installation of a boat lift shall be subject to a special exception approval by the planning board at an advertised public hearing. Section 30-36A of the town code states that the planning board is the final authority on special exceptions. So you have the authority to either approve with conditions, or to deny the application. Staff does find that the project is consistent with the town's code and the comprehensive plan, and we do recommend approval of the request subject to the following conditions. And based on the plans that were submitted by the applicant, date stamped July 27, 2020. The first condition is that following approval by the planning board and prior to initiation of construction, that the applicant submit for a building permit from the Town of Highland Beach Building Department. And number 2, pursuant to section 30-21G of the town code, commencement of construction shall be initiated within 2 years following the date of approval by the planning board. Completion of all conditions of approval shall occur within 2 years following the date of approval by the planning board. I'll be glad to address any questions you might have.
Are there any questions for the board, for the staff? Okay. Does the applicant want to make any presentation? Where's Mr.
Ms.
Nutter?
Middleton has a question.
Eileen. Hold on, I'm sorry, I didn't see you. You're in the corner. Eileen?
Yeah, hold on. Ingrid, so you're recommending the approval, but you say that we have the right, it's like a special exception. I'm a little confused about that.
Right, so I mean, the code indicates that for boat lifts and other accessory facilities, that the process, to bring it forward to the planning board is via special exception approval.
So it's a regular kind of boat lift request that we're doing, and it meets our code.
Right. Again,
Yeah,
the
it's
code
just
requires that boat lifts are processed via a special exception.
Okay,
It's
got it.
basically a development order application.
right. The procedure just changed, but
Okay.
it's
Got it.
Okay. Does the applicant, David, do you want to make any statements?
Am I muted? Can you hear me?
We can hear you, yes.
Yeah, this one is very, very standard. It's extremely standard. This is your typical elevator lift. There's nothing special about this one.
Okay.
It's
Does
the
anybody
same
have any
elevator
questions?
lift we've done 1,000 times there in Highland Beach.
Good. Okay, do we have any other questions for Mr. Nutter?
Is there any public comment?
Well, we'll get to that in a minute.
Oh, okay.
Don't rush me, Eileen.
I'm sorry.
That's the, if now that we have no question, I'm sorry, Roger, go ahead.
I just want to say that I'm glad that the applicant chose to put in an elevator lift instead of a 4-post lift. I happen to own the home directly across the canal from the applicant, and I'm glad that he chose to put in an elevator lift.
Thank you. Okay, now, are there any public comments regarding this lift? Good.
Staff did not receive any public comment.
Good. Okay. Is there any discussion with the board regarding this subject?
I make a motion that we should approve it.
I'll second that.
Okay. Is there any discussion of the motion? Then the deputy town clerk, please call the roll.
Member Mendelson,
Yes.
Member Goldenberg,
Yes.
Member Brown,
Yes.
Member DeMoss,
Yes.
Member Ivoire,
Yes.
Member Bowden,
Yes.
Chairperson Axelrod,
Yes,
motion carries.
said okay. We're now at number 10, announcements. There's a virtual town commission meeting on August 13th at 2020 at 12 p.m. There we have plenty of time, gave them plenty of time. There's a virtual financial advisory board meeting, August 20th at 2020. And there's a planning board meeting, September 10th, 2020 at 9:30 a.m. There being no further business before the board, I have a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Yeah,
Okay,
second.
it's 11:08.
Okay.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Bye.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
How do we do that, okay?
Good job.
See you next
Okay.
month.
Okay.